Hey guys, Cohesive Friendship Unit here. I'm Chris and I'm with Jake
Hey guys.
and Brian.
What's going on?
And we are going to be talking about some recent PS5 leaks that have kind of come out and how those leaks might be pointing towards a 2018 release. But first, real quick, likes, subs, comments, always appreciated. If you subscribe, you're entered for a chance to win a standard copy of Far Cry 5 on the PC. And again, all you have to do is subscribe. So let's jump right into it. So Semi Accurate has existed for some time now, and they kind of do tech leaks, usually held behind a paywall. And they just kind of announced one for the PS5. It's a $1,000 paywall to get in. We don't have the whole thing, obviously, but some of it has kind of leaked through. And we're going to talk about what we know. And just kind of, for example, Semi Accurate basically called that there was going to be a PS4 and then like a PS4.5 and like an Xbox, 1.5. And ultimately that was the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. So here's kind of what they claim to know. And then we'll talk about all these points. First, there are already a lot of dev kits out in the wild. And I think, well, we'll talk about that. Second, it's going to be running on the AMD's upcoming Navi architecture, which is going to be the successor to Vega, and it's due to drop this year. And it's going to run on a custom Zen microprocessor, could be Ryzen or something. And it's going to have VR goodies baked in at the silicon level, with a 28 launch not being out of the question. So that's kind of like the high level of what's going on. So do we have any knee jerks or anything that we want to just jump right into?
So I have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah.
I've followed auto blogs, not auto blogs, but like automotive sites fairly closely in the past. I don't so much anymore, but one thing that I can say is there are definitely people out there who are like leakers. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So on the question of this being legitimate, I think that if they've been accurate in the past, we don't really have any reason not to believe them. The VR stuff, I think, makes a lot of sense. Sony's invested in VR previously, and it just makes sense to put into your next generation console. What I would be really interested to see, and this is just from a kind of watching how things unfold perspective, is when they made the decision to go with AMD for the chips. If it was before or after the Heartbleed thing with Intel, because at least in the PC market, I know they've seen some fallout from that.
Yeah.
So I'd just be just as a curiosity thing purely. I'd just be interested to see when that decision was finalized, or when this person is claiming that was finalized.
I have some thoughts on the AMD thing. I have kind of two thoughts. The first one would be this AMD thing has been AMD was used in the Xbox One and the PS4, so they've had a history with AMD, which I'm cool with. But the next one would be I was kind of wondering if, as a result of that breach, if Intel had some like CPUs that they could sell on the cheap or something. I don't know. I was just thinking like way outside the box.
Well, I was kind of thinking at it from a perspective of advertising. Like, if Intel's kind of gotten a black eye over this, you're not really going to want to advertise that you have Intel products in your console.
And right now, Ryzen's like killing it.
Right. So that's a little value added for just kind of putting a sticker on the front of the thing, or just putting something on the box saying that it's powered by AMD or whatever.
Yeah.
But like you said, they have gone with it in the past, so It could just be they've used that supplier and they want to go with them going forward.
Yeah, I also want to talk about, since we're on AMD, they are also mentioning using Navi architecture, and I kind of have two thoughts on that, and this will ultimately lead to the 2018 thing. Navi is supposed to be the successor to Vega. Vega was, with the exception of cryptocurrency mining, like a royal flop. It, came out basically 2 years too late to compete with the Vega 64, the most expensive one, being essentially a GTX 1080 that runs hotter and uses more power.
And
Uh,
way more expensive.
and it's way more expensive. Yeah. So I just, based on that being a flop and based on it not being good with heat and power, I wonder if this was like a deal that was made before the launch, or if they know something about Navi that we don't, or what. But it just seems like really strange to me that a console, which is I probably going to be smaller and use less power, like PS4 always bakes their power supply into the console. There's never an external brick. Like, when you're dealing with what I'm assuming is going to be at least a lot of heat and a lot of power, regardless of performance. AMD also kind of has a history of that. I don't know. That seems a little weird to me.
Yeah, that
Well,
does seem weird.
A couple of thoughts. One thing it could be is AMD kind of knowing where their market is. Intel, up until this Heartbleed bug, was pretty much the unquestioned dominant force in CPUs, whatever, for the PC market. So maybe it's a question of AMD going harder in marketing as, we can make you something that'll work for your application that's specifically tuned for putting into a console or whatever. And that kind of addresses the concerns with heat and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe Navi will be sick. Like, I don't actually know anything about it besides the memory it's going to use.
Well,
I feel
and,
like they're
and
banking
the other,
on it just being
sorry,
a
go ahead.
huge improvement. I don't think they know anything special about Navi that the average person doesn't know. I think they're just gambling on it.
The other really big question is, was this architecture a flop because it was technically flawed, or was it a flop because Intel up until this point has had a hugely dominant market share?
Oh, I'm talking from the GPU side. So, like Navi's on the GPU side, so it
Oh,
would be
okay.
against NVIDIA. I honestly think it wouldn't have been a flop if it had come out. Well, it wouldn't have been great, but it wouldn't have been a flop if it launched a year and a half earlier. But,
Right.
like, you know,
Right, but the Nvidia just makes GPUs.
yeah.
AMD also makes CPUs and
No,
you
I
know,
know, and their CPU is killing it. It's the GPU that has a has been rough.
right.
Um, yeah. So the other thing is, if Navi's supposed to drop in 2018, usually when a GPU drops, the supply is relatively poor, be it that they have like a low yield rate or whatever. They don't make them fast enough ahead of time. But even when like a new GPU launches just for PCs, it's extremely hard to get. And I feel like, so for example, the Nintendo Switch used the Tegra X1 chip, which actually came out years ago. Like I want to say 2015. And as a result, they were able to have 2 million Switches manufactured by launch. I think launching with a brand new architecture seems very unlikely.
Well,
I
That's a
guess what
good
I'm
point.
saying is, I don't buy 2018. I buy 2019.
Yeah. Because they ran out of Switch. They ran out of Switches, and they had plenty of time to
it's
manufacture those.
it's not really apples to oranges though, is it? Because the Switch is a whole game console. We're just talking about GPU architectures here. The other thing that's kind of important to consider is the crypto market isn't doing so well right now, and that puts a lot of demand on the GPU market, and they must factor into that somehow. when they're figuring out, okay, we need to launch with this many on hand, they must factor into it, okay, some people are going to be buying these and just mining with them. So the price is going to be a lot more volatile on on a small percentage of the units because a few people are willing to pay more money for it if it's a good mining GPU, which AMD has historically been better than NVIDIA. So, but I think that market not really working out right now helps them kind of just cater to the gamers and say, okay, we have the capacity to actually launch this new architecture in late 2018. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, but
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, so let's talk about the VR. So
Yeah, I
right
was
before
gonna
this
say.
video started, I was saying the whole VR goodies baked in at the silicon level. I mean, I know they said the silicon level, but I'm kind of thinking this is going to be basically like the breakout box that you buy or that comes with your PS VR is just going to be kind of cooked in, and then maybe they'll have some other slight VR positive stuff at a silicon level, but nothing mind blowing. They sold 2 million PSVRs, which is pretty good when you've sold 70 million PS4s. 2 million is good considering what the Vive and the Rift have been able to do. But I'm slightly worried it won't be as bad as the Xbox One because I don't think they'll go this far. But the Xbox One, part of the big issue was it was bundled with Kinect and people lost their damn minds. I think if they overextend and have too much VR stuff that drives up the price. I'm not saying they're going to ship a headset with it, but like if whatever they're doing is driving up the price significantly, I think that's bad.
I don't think I think baked in at the silicon level means there's a coprocessor, and it's not. They've determined they can put that in without really affecting the price too much. The thing with the Kinect is that the Kinect was required. Like
Yeah.
you had to get it. Baked in kind of implies that it's like VR ready instead
Yeah.
of VR enabled straight out of the box, which if you ask me, that's kind of a better strategy.
I think this is going to accompany some sort of big update to PSVR because, I mean, like
Oh,
you said,
absolutely, yeah.
PSVR has been successful, and it's what, like at the $200 price point, I think, versus
Just for the headsets, 300 for like the camera and the wands. Like if you don't own a PS Move, which who did,
right.
then you're buying the whole set. But 300's pretty. That's very
It's
competitive.
Yeah,
reasonable.
compared
It's
to the
reasonable.
600 for a Vive.
And you gotta have the computer to power a Vive.
Right.
PSVR, you own a PS4, any model, you got PSVR.
So I think it'd be cool to see a good update to PSVR because I've heard it's pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good for the price point.
Yeah, I've heard the same. I actually have like struggled internally. Like if I were to get a VR headset, would I get a PSVR just because I have a PS4 Pro
Right.
and it's cheaper and it's pretty good
Especially
versus
since
spending.
you're like the only one of us that could actually run a Vive.
Well, and I think that you could draw an interesting parallel with what you just said, Chris, between Sony and Nintendo. You know, it's not the best system out there, but everything just kind of works together, and you're guaranteed that everything. Like if you get a PSVR and you have a PS5, we're assuming it'll just work out of the box. You don't have to deal with any of the configuration and all that bullshit that goes along with VR as it stands right now.
Hmm.
You know, that
Yeah.
model seems to work very well for Nintendo. They don't have the most capable systems by any stretch, but they do have what I would say is probably the best integrated systems.
That's true. I agree there. So that reminded me of the PS Vita integration with the PS4, but in the PS3.
Well,
So they
they
tried.
try.
They tried. They tried. A for effort. So do you guys think that there is any possibility in a 2018 launch, like percentage wise?
No, I think No.
No, it's
No.
okay.
Maybe
I'd say
0%. 0%.
I mean, I don't really follow this as closely as you guys do, but I think that there's enough competition in the market to try to get people to push things out as fast as they possibly can, and Sony certainly has the money to do that. And if this is one of those things there, if you're the first one to market with the completely integrated VR system, you pretty much own it. So
They
I
proved
think that
that, yeah, with
I
the
think that
PSVR.
late 2018, maybe it's like a 50-50 shot, but we're not going to be seeing it until October or November at the earliest, I would say.
I think there's a fair chance that it's teased at the end of 2018. I think we might get an announcement that there's going to be a conference Q1 2019 for it to launch holiday 2019. I just think the PS4 is selling like gangbusters.
Right.
It's not, I mean, it's an older console now, but it's not old. Like it's not ancient yet.
And they also really don't have any competition in their market segment.
They're running away from the Xbox One.
And the Switch is not even comparable. It's not the same thing at all. So
Yeah.
you can't draw a parallel.
And unless games like Days Gone and Last of Us 2 and a few other kind of notable PS4 exclusives are just going to shift over to PS5, I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Also, I wouldn't feel burned at all if my PS4 Pro is like 7 months old and the PS5 comes out. But
Right.
so one last question, real quick, just kind of final, little, somewhat related. Nintendo, not so much this time, but pretty much all of their consoles have had some form of backwards compatibility, and people tend to like it. I like it. Every Nintendo system I've owned that has had backwards compatibility, I have used significantly. Now, the Xbox One put a lot of R&D into making an Xbox 360 emulator, and that is now backwards compatible with both 360 and original Xbox games. And people are kind of pushing Sony to do the same, and they're not budging. Do you think that the next console will have any form of backwards compatibility?
No, I don't think it will, because they're looking for sales on the market. They're looking to sell you the same game that you bought 15 years ago so that you can play it on your current system. I don't think there's any good reason not to have decent emulation or even very good emulation from a first party, especially when you consider that there are people that make emulators for these things in their free time, and 80% of the time the emulator works perfectly well. There's no reason that Sony or Microsoft or whoever can't put a good emulator in a console that just makes it work with the old games. Unless there's a physical media restriction like there is with a lot of Nintendo stuff, there's really no reason for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
In my book.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I kind of forget what the question is now, to be honest, but
Is it going to have backwards compatibility?
oh yeah. So based on PS4's previous interactions with like crossplay and stuff, I don't think they're gonna go and budge on this and do backwards compatibility, but it would be nice to see it. I think they're kind of going down the route of remastering old titles rather than allowing people to play old games. But I don't think they're going to budge on it.
Yeah, and I think I kind of agree with you guys. I think in the past they definitely got burned when the original PS3 came out at a ludicrous price point because of all the hardware they had to put in to make it go as far back as PS1 games. And
Well,
they were
there's a reasonable cutoff, I think. I think that the PS5 having PS4 and PS3 emulation would be reasonable, but
yeah.
PS2 is kind of stretching it.
Well, so I mean, what Xbox One does is instead of like, so with the Wii U, they basically put a Wii in the with uh with the pretty much every backwards compatible thing, like truly backwards compatible thing. The PS3, they basically put a PS2 in. Uh, the Xbox One works a little different, where you put the game disc in and it actually runs an emulator, so it's emulating it in real time. It's not like playing natively like most of this other stuff does. So there is a little bit of difference, but
Right, but like the emulation thing, like I said, it works. It
it
doesn't
does,
make
yeah.
much sense to me that you have to put an entire Wii into a Wii U.
No, from
To,
a hardware perspective, that's stupid.
right, like at some level, they're working on the same code or operating system or something. Just put in the chips or whatever to make the DRM work, make it decode it properly, and then just get it down to the point where you can emulate it. I don't the fact that the PlayStation 3 was so expensive because there was a PS2 inside of it, like I look at that and I say, really? Like you couldn't have come up with a more efficient solution than to put a whole console inside another console?
Right.
I guess not. And they took it out and the price plummeted. All right. Brian, do you want to say anything?
Sure.
Cool.
Well, if you think that VR is going to be Sony's killer app for the PS5, let us know down in the comments there. And as always, folks, from the bottom of our hearts, if you like this video, please just make sure to demolish that MF like button and make sure you hit that little ringy dingy up in the top right corner too. If you want to get notified of all the latest stuff we're doing here on the channel, we're coming out with a bunch of videos on stuff that's relevant and up to date in the gaming world. So if you want to stay relevant and up to date, I would highly suggest that you stay updated with what's going on our channel.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Again, listen to Brian, throw us those likes, throw us those subs, throw us those comments. We'll catch you guys in the next one.